Hi again, and I'm once again here with my colleague Loka to talk about the fifth in our topics in this series for insurance firms on redressal expectations and complaints handling. So Loka, let's dig straight into it. What does a recent consultation on changes to DISP really mean about the regulator's expectations on redress?
So the recent CP speaks about a number of things, but the most important part to firms is that they need to be proactive in identifying issues and being ready to remediate them as and when they appear. So the expectation is now changed from being reactive to being proactive. That's what the essential CP is about.
Okay, and do we have a sense of what that change means? So what would be expected of a firm in terms of being proactive?
So firms will now have to analyze their risk frameworks, their resourcing strategies, their compliance frameworks to understand whether they have built it up in such a way that if there is a need for mass redressal, obviously it depends upon the size of the firm and the position in the distribution arrangement, that they are capable of meeting such a challenge.
Okay, so what we're saying there is it's not purely just about being proactive in identifying complaints, but it's about proactively making sure you've got the system and control and resource model in place to handle what could reasonably be expected to be the volume of complaints you're going to receive. And so once firms have done that and they're in place, one thing that has always interested me is how firms balance the need to remediate complaints and handle complaints and then do root cause analysis and take serious steps to look back on the root cause rather than just managing the symptom. And in terms of this consultation and the expectations on firms, how critical is effective root cause analysis?
Root cause analysis is paramount to any reporting, board data, etc. Because without the root cause analysis, you actually do not know what triggered that mass redress event, and you do not get lessons learned from it. You cannot embed systems and controls to prevent that from happening. You can't feed it back into your product design stage, so you can develop product and strategies that does not bring about a second or another redress event. So root cause analysis is the bedrock on which your strategies and your products must be built on.
And that's interesting. There's an element of, I guess, symbiosis in the relationship between this and what we talked about in the first session on simplification, where if you are going to drive a more efficient and effective framework for delivering consumer outcomes and controlling your business to deliver fair outcomes for customers on a consistent basis, one would argue that some of critical to that is root cause analysis of not just your data, but also your complaints, so that rather than layer controls and layer process and layer communication to fix symptoms, you actually pair it right back to the foundations where there were foundational weaknesses to provide broader and more consistent outcomes for customers, which is interesting. And linked to that, we talked in one of the sessions around culture.
Yes.
And how important is senior management engagement in driving a more effective complaints root cause analysis framework?
So when we spoke about in the culture session, we spoke about the fact that it's okay to have your policies, but if they are not effectively embedded, you are not bringing a cultural change. And cultural change starts with the board being proactive, being hands-on, questioning and pushing back when the business provides data. So much so that culture cascades across to the middle management and right down to the frontline staff who are your first line of defense, thereby embedding a culture that is customer centric, a culture that is customer focused, which takes in the root causes from the complaints handling and the claims handling into a much larger degree and provides a holistic view on product performance and customer outcomes.
And thinking about senior management engagement, to what extent do firms need to have plans in place or considerations in place so that they're ready to be proactive when it comes to redressal events?
It needs to be part of their risk framework. Of course, this is proportionate to the size of the firm, like I mentioned previously, and also their position in the distribution chain. But manufacturers and cover holders need to be aware, especially in the Lloyd's market, need to be aware of their role and responsibility when it comes to mass redressal events, how they impact the customer outcomes, and they need to plan ahead for any such unfortunate events happening, actually.
And thinking about remediation itself, what tips would you give listeners who are trying to evidence good customer outcomes when they're addressing remediation expectations?
So the FCA has more than once said that if there is no evidence, it doesn't exist. That's always the stand that the FCA has taken. So when you're doing remediation, it's not enough to just show that you have remediated the particular harm. You have to show how that remediation has been fed back in across the organization into the product design stage, and where the technical flaw that created this remediation event has been addressed, and how it forms part of the strategy for future products, and how it would be embedded in the strategy for developing new products, so that the regulator and the market takes confidence and comfort that such an event will not be a repetition.
That's really interesting, Loka. And I guess I take a few takeaways from this. Historically, complaints have always been a process that's been handled, and numbers have been reported to various authorities and internally. But I think what you're saying here is this consultation and the way in which the regulators are focusing just reminds organizations that complaints aren't just about that. Complaints are about, demonstrating culture, demonstrating accountability, customer centricity, a way to prevent foreseeable harm in customer markets. Yes. And therefore the importance of this shouldn't be limited to we must have a process and people. This is actually endemic in the firm being able to demonstrate that harm prevention is central and the customer is central to what they're trying to achieve.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
Thank you, Loka.
Thanks, John.